Good afternoon. In a dramatic turn of events, Germany finds itself at a crossroads as Chancellor Olaf Scholz' coalition government crumbles, coinciding with Donald Trump's unexpected return to the White House. Europe watches anxiously as its economic powerhouse faces political turmoil, while across the Atlantic, a familiar face is to reshape global dynamics. This perfect storm of domestic instability and international uncertainty has left Germany and European leaders scrambling to navigate uncharted waters, raising concerns about Germany's role in the EU and the future of transatlantic relations in light of Trump's second term. Welcome to In Depth.
We can fix every single problem our country faces and lead America, and indeed the whole world. USA! This is a magnificent victory for the American people. Promises made, promises kept. We're going to keep our promises. Nothing will stop me from keeping my word to you, the people. We will make America safe, strong, prosperous, powerful, and again.
On November 6, a seismic shift hit Western politics. Donald Trump's victory in the US and the collapse of Germany's traffic light coalition government. Scholz's fragile alliance of Social Democrats, Greens and Liberals fractured over economic policy, with Finance Minister Christian Lindner rejecting calls for increased spending and tax cuts, deepening the crisis. Meanwhile, France's political instability further hampers European unity. With Scholz's minority government unable to survive, early elections are likely, leaving Germany and Europe vulnerable as Trump's return signals uncertain global leadership ahead. The German Chancellor Olaf Scholz is facing increasing isolation as Donald Trump's return to the White House approaches. Once a staunch ally of Joe Biden, Scholz now finds himself struggling to secure a call with Trump, despite reaching out to his team after the election results. Bloomberg reported that Trump has historically criticized Germany. Meanwhile, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, a close Trump ally, has mocked Scholz's political troubles on social media, drawing widespread attention. While Scholz remains focused on maintaining transatlantic ties, the growing influence of Musk and the shifting political landscape may force him to reconsider his approach, if he's still in power when Trump takes office. So today we explore the political and economic challenges facing Germany and Europe after Scholz's coalition collapse, coinciding with Trump's US election victory and the rising European concerns. Now, for more analysis on this, we are joined from Berlin by Maysara Bakur, a director of the Arab European Center for Studies, and by Dr. Ihsan El-Khatib, a professor of political science, joining us from Kentucky. Thank you, both of you, for being on the program. Mr. Bakur, let's start with you. What do you think were the primary factors that led to the collapse of Olaf Scholz's coalition government?
تحياتي لك وللضيف الآخر.
Good morning, sir. Good afternoon. In fact, yesterday I was speaking with a German senator, and he was in the Wednesday session, and he told me literally that the main reason behind the collapse of the coalition government is a discord between Chancellor Scholz and the Minister of Finance. It was a discord around the budget. In fact, the coalition government wanted to add a 6 billion internal debt budget, and the Ministry of Finance rejected this utterly, knowing that there is a law that allows the government, in cases of emergency and defense, to surpass the budget. But the Ministry of Finance, in fact, rejected this altogether, and that was the main reason of the discord between the two officials. But, we have the dismissal or the resignation of the Minister of Defense and the other issues regarding the Minister of Foreign Affairs. All these things have been leading to a lot of discord. And in fact, when the new immigration and citizenship laws were adopted and the job center measures, when they were adopted, in fact, all these things grouped together, they led to the exacerbation of this discord. And in fact, this all got culminated with the additional 60 billion internal debt offer.
Okay, and Dr. Al-Khatib, what do you make of the collapse of the coalition government of Chancellor Scholz? And how might this, do you think, impact Germany's leadership role in the EU?
Thank you for inviting me to this interview. I don't think that this is an issue related to the US and to Trump. This is an internal German matter, and Germany has been struggling with problems for a long time. The coalition was of disparate, different parties that really don't have much in common, and they failed in solving the problems of Germany. Now, as to the US, the win of the victory of Trump should not be shocking. I think the extent of the victory is shocking, but the public has been divided. The public opinion polls have clearly stated that it's within the margin of error. The Europeans know exactly who Donald Trump is. The problem is that they read about him and hear about him from liberal Democrats, from the Washington Post, from New York Times, from CNN, from the Washington elite. But this guy is predictable, I think. He told them exactly what he wants. He told them they want them to contribute more to their own defense, and they will get the same Trump they had before. He's not nice sometimes, but I think he's clear, and he's focused on getting the results more than anything else.
Okay, well, Dr. Al-Khatib, I definitely want to come back to you and ask you some more about that relationship between the EU and the US with a Trump victory. But Mr. Bakour, I'll come back to you for a second. What do you make of the fact of Germany's leadership in the EU, and what might this collapse of Scholz government mean for that leadership role? Are you there, Mr. Bakour?
سؤال إلي أو للضيف الآخر؟
Okay, we're just asking you about Germany's leadership role in the EU and how that might be affected by the collapse of the government.
لا يوجد عمليا لا يوجد انهيار
In practicality, there isn't an actual collapse because, even the budget discord is backed by the article number 111, which allows for the increase in budget in cases of emergency or defense. In the 15th of January, maybe a month or 2 months from now, a referendum is going to be established or launched around withdrawal trust from Chancellor Scholz. if he gained or retained the trust, there will not be a problem. But if trust was withdrawn from him, then the article number 68 is going to be operationalized and enacted in order for Scholz to lead a steering government. And he can just keep on or maintain his seat and lead a government in which some minorities are represented. In fact, Chancellor Scholz wants to provide 3 additional million euros to Ukraine, and this is in fact causing a lot of discord as well. When it comes to trade relations, there was a collective bankruptcy for a lot of companies in Germany, and in fact it is the Scholz government that incurs all this responsibility or all these issues. So yes, it's true that the leadership of Germany is, or maybe getting negatively affected, but the constitution is backing a lot of these discords.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Mr. Bakour. And Dr. El-Khatib, you mentioned before about it not being a shocking result that Trump won, but perhaps the size of his win was quite shocking. And that of course, gives him a huge mandate, not just domestically, but in his foreign policy as well. What challenges do you foresee in US-German and also US-European relations in general with a Trump victory and a Trump government?
The problem is the Europeans have a preference for Democrats, and they had many voices in Europe made it clear that they're not happy with Trump. Actually, and it's like they were an echo chamber of the Democratic Party that was exaggerating the issues of Trump. Yes, Trump is not a perfect candidate. He does say things that are not nice, and he's unconventional. He's a populist, but they got carried away with the exaggerations, the caricature of Trump, and here in the election, he was called fascist, Nazi, ending democracy and all that, which is all exaggeration for just exciting the base of the Democrats to turn out and vote in high numbers. But it doesn't really reflect what he stands for. He is going to have issues with the Europeans, the old issues and new issues. The old issues, it's a very old, decades old, the issue of how much are the Europeans spending on their defense. If you're part of NATO, you have to spend 2% of your economy on defense. And if you don't do that, it means you're counting on the US to help you. And that was annoying for many American administrations. The only person who did something about it in an undiplomatic way is Trump. Said, you need to spend, especially Germany. Germany is a wealthy country. Germany is an economic powerhouse, but doesn't spend enough on defense. Not only that, it was building close ties with the Russian Federation and tightening the dependence of Germany on energy from Russia. And Trump saw that as a problem. He told them not to do that, not to be overly dependent on Russia, but they thought that it doesn't make sense. And it turned out that he's right. I mean, they're too dependent on Russian energy, and that's not good for them. They thought that they can be friends with Russia, and then at the same time, they get upset with Trump when he removes the hundreds, maybe thousands of American soldiers from Germany. If you're not afraid of Russia, then why you're upset when he removes a small number of American soldiers? The other issue is Ukraine. I mean, the U.S., the United States, does not see Russia as an enemy, period. Doesn't. There is no reason to see Russia. Russia does not challenge U.S. dominance of the world, does not at all, does not have the capacity to challenge. Now, Russia is a headache for the Europeans. It's very close to them, and this ambitious power. And there is Ukraine. There's the issue of Ukraine. The United States does not see Putin as an enemy, does not see Putin as a challenge to its hegemony in the world, sees China as the issue. and then they're preparing to confront China in many ways. The Europeans were not convinced that China was the problem. They saw more of Russia as the problem and Putin, not China. But they have come around to see China as a problem, which is good. Trump likes that they're finally on the same page as to that. But as to Russia, the U.S. does not have any interest in weakening Putin or having the Russian state collapse, because Russia is a huge country. The Federation is a huge country. It has a lot of nuclear weapons. And many Americans, actually, especially right-wing Christians, they like Putin. They like how he's traditional Christian. It's a white Christian country. It's European. And they feel affinity to Russia. Now, does the U.S. want Russia to expand and swallow Ukraine? Expand? No, it doesn't want that. But at the same time, they don't want to fight. The U.S. does not want to fight open war at American taxpayer expense, because here is a war that open-ended. There is no end in sight, and the U.S. is paying for this war. And Trump is not a fan of spending American money open-ended conflict. He's not gonna do that. And American national interest is not liberating the last inch of Ukrainian land. I mean, there are issues with some Ukrainian areas have affinity to Russia, and Trump wants to put an end to this war because there's no point that he sees that a lot of Ukrainians are suffering and dying, and he doesn't want to fight 20 years in Ukraine spending money. So he wants to bring the war to an end. And the Europeans know that. I mean, the Russians know that. And no war, he says, no war in Gaza, no war in Lebanon, no war in Ukraine, because that's not a solution. That's especially that for the Israelis it's open-ended, and for the Ukrainians it's open-ended, and that's not going to continue.
Okay, Mr. Bakour, Dr. Khatib is right, isn't he, in saying that the European countries who are in NATO have not been paying their way. They've not been paying that 2% of GDP on defense spending. And that was one of Trump's big problems in his first term. That's one of his big gripes with NATO, his big problems with NATO in the first term. What do you think that Germany and other European countries can do to make Trump feel better about NATO and certainly not leave it?
If we go back to the understanding of the personality of Donald Trump, we'll have to go back to what he did in the past. He was always threatening to withdraw from the NATO, and he always said his famous slogan, "Pay for protection." In fact, and after the Russo-Ukrainian war, Germany specifically has carried out a lot of military operations, and recently they started speaking about compulsory military recruitment and the purchase of civil defense weaponry and aircrafts of the Model 35. And they now are watching closely the policies of the United States. And in fact, in Germany here, they describe Donald Trump as somebody who is unpredictable. And in fact, Germany is watching closely what the pragmatic Donald Trump is going to do, because he puts American interests above anything and everything. And in fact, Germany is perceiving that his radical policies are going to create a lot of economic tensions. And in fact, Donald Trump is or has a lot of discord with President Zelensky, president of Ukraine. He has a lot of issues with Zelensky, and these issues are putting a lot of burdens on Europe. And now there is a lot of discussion over the forming of a collective European army. And all of these measures are being discussed thoroughly by different European countries in order to counter the radical policies of President Donald Trump. In fact, Donald Trump as well is speaking a lot about imposing further control over the United States borders with Mexico. And this as well is creating or raising some concerns in Europe. And in fact, if you remember, there were discords between Germany and the US around the Fahd tanks, Nubar tanks, and their provision to Ukraine.
Okay. Well, I'll just going to jump in there, Mr. Bakour, because we're just going to take a moment's break to have a look at a special report. But please do, both of you gentlemen, stay with us because we want to chat a little bit more. But we're just going to take a small break to have a look at Europe's latest crisis.
In a twist of fate that sent shockwaves through Europe, Germany's coalition government crumbled just as Donald Trump clinched victory in the US presidential election. Chancellor Olaf Scholz's decision to dismiss Finance Minister Christian Lindner sparked a political firestorm, leading to the collapse of the traffic light coalition and plunging Europe's economic powerhouse into uncertainty. The timing couldn't have been more critical. As Germany grapples with the sustained economic downturn, the specter of Trump's return to the White House looms large, raising concerns about the future of trade and security ties. Scholz, recognizing the gravity of the situation, called for a vote of confidence by January 15, paving the way for potential early elections in March. This political upheaval comes at a time when Europe desperately needs strong leadership. With Trump's victory rekindling fears of isolationism and trade wars, Germany's role as a stabilizing force in the EU is more crucial than ever. The collapse of Scholz's coalition threatens to undermine Germany's ability to navigate these turbulent waters. As Europe watches nervously, questions abound about Germany's future direction. Will the country be able to maintain its leadership role in the EU? How will it address the economic challenges at home while responding to the changing geopolitical landscape? The answers to these questions will shape not only Germany's future, but also the trajectory of European politics in the years to come.
And now we go back to our discussion. We have Mr. Bakour, who is joining us from Berlin, and also Dr. El-Khatib, who's joining us from Kentucky. We'll start with you, Dr. El-Khatib. There are economic challenges that are on the horizon for Germany and the EU if Trump imposes the tariffs that he has promised to do. How do you assess that situation?
The issue of tariffs is a negotiating position. The problem for the U.S. Has been that the economy has been deindustrialized. Jobs were shipped overseas. And it has really impacted the country, especially J.D. Vance is from Ohio, and other states, so-called Rust Belt. Deindustrialization, the jobs were shipped overseas, and that has hurt many American states and American towns. And he wants to bring back manufacturing to the U.S. That's what he wants. These are good jobs, well-paying jobs, and less dependence on China. If they're making things in China and there's an issue with China, why be dependent on China? This dependence on China is not just an economic issue, it's a national security issue. Bring back the jobs to the US. It will be, if he imposes tariffs on the important goods, then it might not be that big of an advantage to make the goods overseas. That's his thinking, that he wants to encourage them to return to the U.S. And American people want that. The American people, this policy of exporting all jobs, manufacturing jobs to China has been hurtful and painful to many areas in the country. And he wants to undo some of that. I don't know how successful it's going to be in doing that, but the tariff is a tool. to achieve that end. And it's a bargaining position. He believes in negotiation and reaching some kind of deal. And it's the starting position. I'm going to use the tariffs as a tool to get that achieved. And I don't think he's looking to fight with anyone. I don't think this guy is irrational. Trump is not crazy. He's not irrational. He is negotiating. He is opening a negotiating position. And by the end of the day, the man doesn't want war, doesn't want conflict with anyone. He wants to achieve, he was elected by the American people. And the American people feel that they're spending money on wars that are not their war. I mean, why spend money on the war in Gaza? That's not America's war. Spend money in Ukraine, that's not America's war. What's the point of that? Afghanistan, why remain in Afghanistan 20 years? He negotiated the deal to get out, and then Biden had a mass leaving Afghanistan. So it's a rational outlook. It's not a crazy outlook. And as to the economy, why this country is deindustrializing and has been deindustrialized, hurt American people. And what's the point? The goal of the U.S. government is not to enrich other countries, but to enrich the American people. That's his point.
Well, there are so many more questions that I have for both of you, but unfortunately, we have just run out of time. Thank you so much, Dr. El-Khatib, joining us from Kentucky, and also Mr. Bakour, joining us from Berlin. It's been a fascinating discussion. Thank you very much to both of you. And thank you for watching this episode of In Depth. You can stay in contact and informed with Q News on our digital platforms. Please do check us out at Qnews EGY on social media. Thanks for watching.